Srinivas, Honorable Secretary, the Ministry of Monetary Affairs, to deliver the keynote address. As you know, Shri Srinivas has been the guiding force behind the Shri Karmayogi from its inception. Sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
My esteemed colleague, Shri General, my dear friend Abhishek, Shri Rakesh Vermati, Governor, Prakash Sir, Tripathi Sir, Governor. I'm so happy to be here, to be amongst a large number of fellow travelers, friends who have been a part of this journey. And I must warmly compliment both my colleagues from either sides for having brought this journey so far. I think it is a very significant moment when we are able to stand, reflect on what we have achieved, and maybe also see where we started and look at the future. I'm just not saying it as empty rhetoric, because when Abhishek invited me, my thoughts really went back to the beginning of the entire program, the Mission Karmayogi program, the thinking behind it. And a lot of stray thoughts started passing through my mind. So I took the permission of Abhishek to speak to you a little bit about that, and then I will come to what I thought would be relevant to today's gathering. I think one important takeaway we should all take away from today's gathering is that the Mission Karmayogi program is an extremely audacious program. It is not a small program by any means. It is not finite in time sense, in terms of its impact. In a way, it is a government transformational program through a soft process approach. How do you change government? How do you adapt government to the modern needs? Was responded through this program. Because one conventional way would be to say, okay, this is the problem statement. People are demography, people are younger, they're used to a different method. You have a point and click generation. In these days, you don't even have to point, you look at it, the eyeball is captured, and then you know what is needed, etc., etc. And in that kind of an environment, how does the government bureaucracy, which is used to processes, in addition to current process, legacy of the process, accountability, etc., etc., how does it adapt and be nimble? This is a large challenge really. And going back, many of us come from that generation, especially from the first table. I was recalling Adil, one story, one experience I had in the year 1996. I used to serve in the district of Sabarkantha, North Gujarat, tribal district. So the practice those days was that many of our citizens would come to the office, they would meet us all, and then there would be this public day, and they would express, "Ki sahab, hamara ye problem hai." And you say, "All right, we will respond." So we initiated a practice which at that time was earth-shattering, very groundbreaking. The practice was, we started giving them a definite timeline in which the job would be done. So typically you stamped out an assurance saying that, okay, this is your job, this is the challenge. Please come back in a month's time, 2 months' time. On so and so date, you can carry your orders and go. So there was this really very extraordinary gentleman, and I actually treat him as one of the representatives of our citizenry, and have immense respect for him. He came from one of the most interior parts of Gujarat, Koshina, and he was there. In fact, he could not even speak Gujarati, he spoke his own dialect. So he said, "I have this problem." So they said, "All right, you please sit," and then we went through all these files. It took me almost half an hour to figure out this problem. I said, "Listen, what you have is a very complicated thing, and it's going to take a while. Are you willing to wait that time?" He said, "Haan, bataiye kab?" I said, "It's going to take exactly 1 year. Imagine in today's day, if you say, okay, come back next year, not come back tomorrow." He did bat an eyelid. He said, "Certainly, bataiye kaun sa date?" And he was illiterate. So he just marked it out on the calendar. He said, "Likhe dena." So my PS stamped it out and we gave it to him, saying, "On Falana date, please come back." Lo and behold, exactly 1 year from that day, he comes into my greatness of the Indian citizenry, that they have enormous spirit of accommodation and participation. But today, it's not that the accommodation does not exist anymore. Technology and the expectation has changed. They cannot respond in this manner. So today you have to be more responsive, more nimble. Problems happen at a population scale. When a problem happens, it happens across the geography. How do you respond simultaneously? Right? So whenever you come from the Diksha platform environment, you understand and you recall when COVID happened and Abhishek was a part of that journey, we had a technical approval for an in-principle approval for the program on the 20th of, I think, roughly 1 week before the COVID lockdown was announced. Only a technical approval, in-principle approval, platform was not ready. We were still at a beta stage, you will recall that. So, the COVID, the lockdown was announced, and then within 7 days we got instructions saying that use the platform, what we have approved, to start training health professionals and other responders to start managing the COVID. You are aware of the problem. Now we had a situation where hundreds of orders were getting issued. You had responders all over. You had the entire population affected. How do you simultaneously align the entire whole of government, whole of administration to respond to the whole of population simultaneously? Normally this would have been an impossible job. But I must say that all our colleagues, many of them who are here, very quickly in less than a week's time, the Diksha platform was adapted, retrofitted. Close to 15 lakh persons were trained to respond and certified in less than 3 months. And even as this was going on, I remember the senior leadership, within a month they said, all right, we are doing a great job. Why don't we train the rest of our colleagues of our friendly countries, Nepal and others? So the point I'm making is, the Karmayogi approach is this. How do you respond at a population scale simultaneously? Because for the citizen, he is interfacing with these millions of public servants simultaneously. He doesn't care what is happening to others. So every instance of interaction has to be fail-proof. Because that is what he is interacting. He doesn't care to know 99% satisfied, but I am unsatisfied. How do I care? Second, I also need to be aware that I am being served by somebody who is competent to serve. I can't say 3 years back he was trained. There used to be an old joke that you go to a medical college and in a medical exam paper, supposing you had choices. And there is a surgeon who gets into this thing, ye to maine mere choice mein chhod diya, I did not read this. You can't have that environment, right? You have to be able to respond. So this is the entire framework within which this whole design of this platform happened. And the reason why I say it was audacious is, fortunately, I've had the opportunity of working with the senior leadership of our government. And way back, and since particularly these days, so many earthquakes are happening. So my mind went back to the earthquake as I was coming. And when the earthquake happened, and you all know I'm talking about the Gujarat earthquake, the last major one. My own district, we had close to around 1,000 people dead, 40,000 houses down, 700 high-rise buildings down. Okay. And on that day, the day of the earthquake, there was a meeting. How do you respond? Chaired by the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister of the state. 4 o'clock we had a meeting. Morning 8:26 we had the earthquake. We responded during the day. 4:26 we had this meeting. It went on for 35 minutes. What would their response be? Let's survive. Let's somehow manage. Let's somehow, plod on. Let's manage. The response was audacious. They said, "Ye aafat ko avsar bane." This was the key line, and it actually motivated and drove us. And then the program that came out, the Gujarat Earthquake Rehabilitation Program, for which the Honorable Crystal Secretary got the various awards, was built on the principle of let's build back, let's be safe. No, it was build back better. better than what it ever was, more sound than it ever was. And therefore, the audacity of that thinking is the audacity of the thinking of this program. And I really invite you to share the audaciousness, and let's take this over as a great challenge. So, from that perspective, when I had the opportunity of course, supporting this entire activity happen, we were working with Bhavani's also in the beginning. The last 2 years, I happened, and many of you are my colleagues and we've had conversations. When I went and worked in the Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy, I had the opportunity of dealing with these issues at a very granular level. And I'm coming to the real issue of content. When we say content is the new oil or whatever you can call it, how do you handle content? What does it mean? What should it really reflect? As Adil was saying, content should be something that I want, right? Then I discovered, and I would strongly invite Abhishek and all of your colleagues to visit the LBS now, because what we did as an adaptation was on several principles. And in a way, we built what we might call as the miniature model which can be scaled. And that's there in the academy. What we had to identify was what is the learning requirement of these large numbers of learners who are coming, most of them senior, and mostly all of them are disparate for different levels of seniority. So let's take the case of LBS. Who do we deal with? We deal with all the services. And you start with people who are coming in fresh, straight out of college, to somebody who was just about to become Secretary to the Government of India. My last phase 5 program had a phase 5. In fact, within 2 weeks after finishing the program, 4 of them were posted as Secretary to the Government. So this is the entire spectrum. So from 0 day of experience to 33 years of experience, each one dealing with a multitude and a different kind of their own, you might say, experience, their own tracks of interest, what you need to be doing. So if this is the complexity of the learning ecosystem, how do you respond? Give a response which is relevant to the learner. So you have to have graded pedagogy. What you are giving needs to be graded. Graded for what purpose? And this is what we did in the academy. Graded to 1, the learning level. What is the level of the learner? Number 2, how current is that information? How frequently are you updating it? And third, is the learner himself on a pathway of evolution of his knowledge? It's not enough to say, okay, this is 6 months old, 2 years old, 3 years old. This is what we are. It cannot be static. So these are the 3 principles of grading. Graded pedagogy. So you have to adapt, and particularly the CTAs have strongly urge you to do that, to see what you are teaching, how it gets graded. In the last 2 years we did that. So today the Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy teaching pedagogy is graded on international lines on 101 to 501 principles. So when there is a program which is at the level of a phase 5, so the information that is at graded and labeled and tagged at 501 gets delivered. If there is a level 3 kind of a program, it's only the level 3 information that is pulled out. And we are working on 23 different domains. I'm not saying that we've managed to complete everything. Wherever we found this one, we've been evolving. So in 23 different domains, we have these 5 levels of learning, calibrated to different learner level, and trying to ensure that the person who is learning is constantly on his own learning pathway. And we insisted that before anybody came to a physical program, they were already onboarded on a digital platform. They consumed the digital platform. We mandated that henceforth, we will not receive you physically if you have not completed it. To the extent that they will be very happy to know, even after the UPSC results are over, within a week or 10 days, we started onboarding all of them onto the pre-learning platform. So before they actually came and signed, before they became government servants or public servants, they had consumed content. And the first thing we did after we just brought them in was to test them for their own level of learning. So I extended my learning by 3 weeks. But more than that, we knew what is the nature of the learner. What are the different levels? And therefore, as Adil had come last year, we explained to him also in this team. So we were working on a UPSC principle. Say, if you have learned something while preparing for the exam in your own academic journey, we try and take you at a level so that what you are learning is adding to what you already know. You're not getting bored to death, you're not sleeping in the class. So the gradation is a fundamental principle on which we have to work, and we need different ways of handling it. The way we handled it was, we created boards of studies. For every domain there is a board of studies. And each board of studies calibrates this information, updates this information, and it is on an annualized calendar basis. So for the year, let's say 23-24, if an information is put out, it is meant to be relevant for that year only. So if the next year's calendar is getting prepared, you have to review it and see, is it still relevant? Do you need to update it? Do you need to knock out something? And move on. And we brought in some extraordinarily eminent people to guide us on each of these domains. For example, if you were doing national security, we had Mr. Ajay Kumar, former defense secretary. For God, you'll be happy to know, they had a serving Supreme Court judge sit on the board of studies. So it was amazing this kind of an experience. So what we really, therefore, all of us need to do, and this actually harks back to the point that Adil says about domain. See, behavior is something which is very good, things have been going on. We broadly understand behavior. Starting from the commit days of UPI of the BOPT 2017 when it was rolled out. Till now, and the rest of the ecosystem understands behavior differently. We also understand a little bit of the other dimensions. But domain is something we have to build. This is core to us, nobody else knows it. That is where the big challenge is, because government is a big black box. Nobody knows outside of government what government does inside. And what you know inside, you can't tell outside. So, you have to curate yourself. You have to build it yourself. There is no option, no choice. So you have to create this content marketplace, which is both inward looking as well as that is able to plug into the larger ecosystem of, you might say, the private sector or content providers. I think these are some of the challenges. The second large challenge also is to create content that is not only relevant, but content that is constantly generated. All of us have these experiences, right? We have a lecture going on. We work very hard to prepare for a particular module. Very senior faculty are brought in. They also come prepared. But the moment it gets delivered and they go, it vaporizes in our system. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. You ask the same person to come back, you have to make the same amount of effort. So the issue really is how do you capture it as it happens? You have to capture it as it happens. If you do not capture it as it happens, then we have lost the opportunity. So what we did was we set up a center. Again, I invite Abhishek and his team to go there. It is called the CDAP, the Center for Digitization and Publication. Where, and I'm happy to tell you, of course, I left academia about 6 weeks back, but the process was put in such a way. Now the foundation course, 98 foundation course got completed on the 3rd of November. Today, on the 3rd of November, every element of everything that went in is documented, available as teachable nuggets for the next batch. Because we did it simultaneously. If I was delivering a lecture, it was not only recorded, it was getting converted into whatever bite size. We used it when we were designing the iGot platform, we used the Netflix principle. Anytime, anywhere, any device, but in bite size. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever is your appetite, time, etc., etc. Because we no longer have the same level of time available, nor even the aptitude for it. So, how do you calibrate this information into different levels? How do we ensure that it becomes agnostic to the person. For instance, if some content is delivered, is it possible? So therefore, what we would do is, every time we got in a senior faculty, we would request that faculty, is it all right if we were to record you? Can we get a kind of an agreement from you that we can put it out for our own internal purpose, so that we can disseminate this and use it? Usually, mostly, they would agree, excepting some foreign faculties. And then we would use it and convert it. I think this conversion process is something that has to happen simultaneous, immediate, and before we lose the freshness of it, it has to be done. Only then will we have content. And therefore, this content will then have to be put back in the consumption loop. So the next course that is coming, this is available as either a pre-reading or in the class reading. So we started working on a principle of a Y-2 principle. Because obviously, if you put everything out in the digital domain, people will come and sleep in the class. And obviously, because and you can't create so much fresh stuff every day. Even Bollywood can't do it. Isn't it? They're still running around trees only. So you need a content that can be calibrated to what can be delivered physically, what can be delivered digitally, and what requires interactivity, what brings it freshness, visuals, etc., etc. Not to keep them awake, but to engage. So this is the other element of this entire CTAP approach that we had, where we started building content we were preparing so that as and when the Y-2 principle S2 is actually public good. Knowledge has to be public good. It cannot be restricted to CTI, it cannot be restricted to government, etc. Because ultimately, it is society which prospers, which learns, acquires knowledge. It should be made as. So Y-2 we said we will put it out. Of course, with a little bit of an attribution, use it where you want. Y-1 is where we were going to share it on the iGot platform, so that Y itself ensures that everybody is awake in class. So broadly, these are the principles on which a lot of content and documentation happened, and I must say that we were very happy with the success of this entire approach. It took us 2 years, very hard work, but we got the processes in place. We got the systems in place. So therefore, the Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy, when it was redesigned in its process, knowledge management became the core of the process. Not people management, not administration, not registration. What do we mean by knowledge management? For instance, now we have the 98th foundation with 560 people who passed out. Next year, 99th foundation course will start sometime, I would expect, around say 28th of July 2024. Okay. So whoever is going to run that program would reach to CDAP and say that, no, give me free learning content. What can I give as digital learning? What can I give as in the class learning? What can I give as readouts, handouts? What can be made available as digital media during the class? So the knowledge management entity was the CDAP that we created. So that the content is the engine and the motor of the whole operation. So that is really what changed our approach and enabled us to not only ensure that the learning in the class was very high, it also enabled the various centers of the academy to start really becoming the top-notch national centers, which they are. So for instance, the National Center of Law Administration was created, which now on a monthly basis publishes the latest in administrative law coming out of the Supreme Court, various high courts, etc. on a monthly basis on a thematic manner. We are sharing information. So we started doing a lot of these onboarding kind of activity. And one other interesting experiment I'm very happy to say here, it was launched by Srimati Radha Chauhan, Secretary Personnel. It is called the IAS Pro Center. It's a very interesting concept. The concept is, IAS Pro means Professional Goals Orientation Center. You know, what do we mean by that? Whatever I said so far in terms of content is still static. It is still 6 months, it is still 1 year, it is still once in 3 years. It is still on a finite basis. But the ecosystem of transfers and postings is dynamic. Nobody in this country has the power to stop it. We cannot say, let's have a moratorium between now to the next 10 minutes. No transfer will happen in this country. Are there? It won't happen. People will keep on changing. People will keep on coming into new roles. Sometimes government works very beautifully. Government is very, very wary of experts and expertise. It's a and it's a very wise thing. So usually government doesn't post experts into areas of their expertise. Because they want freshness of approach and thought. So we always go into a job with completely fresh blank minds and start working. Now when this ecosystem happens, how do we ensure that this dynamic architecture works in a manner that is deeply synchronized with the backend? So the IAS Pro was the response to that. So what we did was that we created an architecture saying that in the domain that we were working with the ministries. The first of its kind was rolled out with the Ministry of Energy. So we said, anybody and everybody working in this particular sector, now for example, energy sector, no matter where he is working in any geography, any organization, any government, any level of government, would be brought up to speed in this sector in terms of what are the priorities of that sector, what are the priorities of that ministry, what is the latest information that they are coming out with. So this content is co-curated with the ministry. And for the first time ever in the history of this country, one entire sector was brought together for 5 days. So it was not just IAS officers, it was not just engineers, it was not just civil servants, anybody who was in that. So we had about 65 people who came for 5 days, participated in this program. At the end of 5 days, which was about 2.5 months back, I can say on that day, at least the power sector in this country was up to speed all over the country at par. Now imagine if this was happening to 30, 40, 50 domains, 70, 80 ministries. Not all ministries need this, but let's say 30, 40 ministries happening simultaneously. Then we have a situation where the digital content, the physical content, and the onboarding content, role orientation content, starts working in a synchronous manner and ensures that those who are working and serving in sectors have up-to-date knowledge, not just about their own personal knowledge, knowledge relevant to that sector, which the government of that particular level would indicate. So broadly, this was the another thing that happens. So the point I'm really making, for a lot of things that we can talk about, is that these are the various challenges. We have to build models that make our learners be up to speed every instant, so that he or she is able to consume content in a very seamless manner and be able to respond to the citizen on the other side or to the government job that he is addressing at that moment in a manner that he or she is fully competent to do so. So frankly, many years back, my colleague David started it and I rolled it out. Dinesh is here. Dinesh, you passed it? Yeah. Is a part of that journey. We rolled out the Commit program. Commit program was similarly like this, where millions of learners were onboarded and we were doing a beta program. We were trying to understand. So a lot of the behavioral content that is there, how to manage the stress is a part of the whole Commit program. And then we realized, and we also understood the challenges. What if you don't have, let us say, technical internet connectivity? What if you are not able to physically bring everybody? But was designed on a principle that for one day only physically they are brought. And the rest of the time, 60 hours, learning hours, you have to consume within a period of 6 months, etc., etc. So those were the basic principles which brought in a kind of a hybridization. Now I think in all these years, since we have learned 6 years now, with a mission Karmayogi, with Honorable Prime Minister himself. I do not think there is an example anywhere in the world of this kind of a program, where for the purpose of upgradation of human resources, the chief executive of the country and the chief executives of the state governments are sitting together to work on ways and means of going forward. So this also is audacious as well as pathbreaking. So when this kind of a environment exists for all of us, and when we have a cabinet secretary, a secretary, head unit, of course, a lot of it was learned from the UK experience also. Then we improvised on it. We realized that the UK experience went only that far, and then we move on. So these things that are now available for us are now the instruments and the instrumentalities that can help us undergo a quick adaptation. And as many of you know, both these gentlemen are here on the stage, representing the two wheels of the car. The Capacity Building Commission on one side, signaling need, Karmayogi Bharat on the other side, signaling response. Both working simultaneously, synchronously, in harmony, trying to deliver to the learner in the country. And I'm very happy that all of you are here. I just wanted to share these thoughts because the last 2 years we experimented a lot. We learned a lot. I wanted to share these thoughts with you. There are, I'm sure, ways of improving it. But where we are, there is a model now available. And what I say is the architect's model. Architect's model is usually the miniature model that is made. Saying, okay, this is how your house is going to look, and then you scale it up. So if you go to the Statue of Unity, in the atrium you have that large head of Sardar Patel. So that was an architect's model, which was approved before the painting was built on a scale of 1:6. So this kind of a small model was built, it's available for evaluation, adaptation. I would strongly request Abhishek and his team to look at that. Prakash sir has been a part of a lot of this journey. He helped us set up the AIML lab. Some of the AIML programs are now a part of district administration. Some of them have not only got Prime Minister's awards, but they are now being presented. And these are what our young civil servants learnt in the academy. There is a young officer from Maharashtra cadre who wrote out a program to evaluate how AIML can help in assessing whether the quality of road built is good enough or not. That is now under implementation. It is hardly 4 years old research. So similarly, large number of programs are currently rolling out. There is a very highly energetic, enthusiastic group on the other side. You just have to respond to their needs, make it happen. AIML, with the help of Vadwani Foundation, we managed to have that happen. Dispatch is another thing that is evolving and growing at the behest of the Honorable Prime Minister. So all of you, I think we can collectively respond to this immense national task, because finally, in my view, all of us are public servants. And if our country really has to become great, we cannot have a modern economy, we cannot have an aspirational society, we cannot have a young demography saddled with an inefficient government process. So let's upgrade that. Thank you very much.